What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here with some more Detroit Lions free agency news. The Detroit Lions have made another re-signing. Also, one Detroit Lions free agent that has not been re-signed is going elsewhere. So let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take two more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here. And we're back for some Detroit Lions free agency news. And today we have a little bit of an update that actually went down while we were doing our Michigan basketball stream. So we have some free agency news to discuss. Shout out to everybody that was in that stream. They're going to play once again on Saturday, I believe. So we'll be back to stream that once again as well. Also, if you're checking out this video, we might just be live on last second dose on this channel. Check it out. However, the Detroit Lions have made some moves. And again, these updates are going on doseofdn.com, where we are tracking the Detroit Lions free agency moves. And the one that went down today so far, according to Jeremy Fowler, is that the Lions are re-signing backup quarterback, or I should say kind of like third-string quarterback, David Blough. Now, the contract details are not out there yet for David Blough's contract. We don't know how long it is. I'm going to assume it's a one-year deal. We don't know how expensive it is. I'm going to assume it's like around the league minimum, because that's kind of what his contracts have been recently. So it's probably somewhere in that area. He was a restricted free agent. For a second, I was thinking he was an exclusive rights free agent, which would have meant there was no guarantees on his contract. However, he was a restricted free agent, so the Lions, of course, didn't place a tender on him. They let him hit free agency, and then they brought him back. The important part about this re-signing is the contract details for David Blough. I would like to see what those are. We'll get them soon, and I want to take a look at how much guaranteed money the Detroit Lions are giving David Blough. To me, that's the most interesting side of it. So we did the video talking about restricted free agents. David Blough was one of those guys. We did it a little while ago, and after watching back David Blough, looking at his preseason film, we know he was always with the third team in the preseason. Watching that, you see his control of the offense. We know that he has some ability to take off. He plays a very confident game. That's what I would say. He looked very confident out there, and he led some, you could say comebacks in some of the preseason games, like the Steelers game, the Bills game. He got us rolling a little bit. Tim Boyle was always ahead of him in terms of like the depth chart in the preseason. Tim Boyle statistically was not as good as David Blough, who David Blough statistically in the preseason did really well. Again, I think that we didn't necessarily help out Tim Boyle the best. I think we left definitely some yards out there for Tim Boyle, but David Blough did well with the third string unit. David Blough never became the backup quarterback. He's really never given that shot. We talked about the Steelers game when the Lions rode with Jared Goff because they didn't have Tim Boyle healthy, and even though David Blough was there, they just rode with an injured Jared Goff. David Blough never seemed to really work his way up the depth chart last season. I thought it was a pretty competitive battle throughout training camp. I actually thought that Tim Boyle was winning that battle, but it was a pretty competitive battle, so I thought they liked Tim Boyle. So that re-signing went down, which did not surprise me too much. I actually kind of liked the re-signing. I know a lot of people didn't like the re-signing. I liked the re-signing of Tim Boyle at the price point to bring him back, but I did not expect the Detroit Lions to bring back both Tim Boyle and David Blough. However, the big part about that to me is the guaranteed money, because for me, the way I look at this, and we talked about it in the stream, is it feels like almost kind of a possible placeholder re-signing for the Detroit Lions. The Lions have continued their offseason plan, which we came in expecting. We did this video probably months ago talking about how the LA Rams did it when Brad Holmes was there, re-signing your guys. The Lions have stuck true to their plan, which I absolutely love. You say this is the foundation we're going to build, this is the plan, stick to that plan. I got to believe when they were laying it out for Sheila Ford Hampton, like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. A big part of it, because he said many times, is build the foundation. Well, you can't build the foundation if you don't bring back the guys that were a part of that foundation that you believed in. So the Lions have been doing that. They've been bringing those guys back. That doesn't mean necessarily that I'm saying David Blough is part of that foundation. However, I view David Blough as kind of a possible placeholder, where he could make the roster next season. With the Tim Boyle re-signing to a one-year deal, the Lions are aware of their quarterback situation. Jared Goff's contract is what it is. Next season he's going to be here. So with Jared Goff, it's a big year next year. If he does well in this offense, and they feel like they put ample pieces around him to be successful, then he can come back and you can continue to roll with Jared Goff, because finding a quarterback is one of the toughest things to do in sports in general. In the case, they brought back Tim Boyle on a one-year deal with an opportunity opportunity to continue to improve because they saw it when he was on the field. He missed most of the season due to an injury, about half of the season until he came back to practice. So they bring him back on a one-year deal. So it feels like, okay, we kind of have this quarterback situation for next year where we got our two guys. But what about that third quarterback? Now, you can keep three quarterbacks on the active roster. I think the Lions did that last season. Or, of course, you could go with two. It just depends about how you feel about that situation. So with that, with David Blough, I don't necessarily look at David Blough as a lock to make the team just because he was re-signed. If he was an exclusive rights free agent, I think it would have been a tender and he would have been brought back because there's no guarantees. But I'm going to assume here there's probably not a lot of guarantees put on this deal. As we've seen with the Rams in the past when Brad Holmes was there, and what we're seeing with the Lions, they want to keep the draft open. They want to bring in guys. They want to bring back their guys, but they also want to keep the draft open. That way they're not forced into taking certain positions. So Tim Boyle was a big part of that. Plus, he was one of the cheaper backups that was signed to a deal. So I liked that. But I feel like David Blough is sort of a placeholder. If the draft goes along and they don't have a pick that they love at quarterback, they don't need to push for one to have a third string to compete. I don't believe the Lions are going to take a quarterback very high in this draft. I just don't see it happening. How the way that free agency is playing out and the plan that the Lions are going with, it just doesn't seem to make sense. Of course, if you fall in love with someone, then yeah, you take him. That's what a big part of free agency was allowing you to do things like that. I just don't see it necessarily happening. He could be back next season to compete for the third quarterback position. Probably not going to have a ton of guarantees, so it's probably not going to be locked in for next season. So if you bring in a late round draft break, if you bring in an undrafted player and you want that competition, those guys can compete. If David Blough wins the battle, you can keep David Blough around. If he doesn't win the battle, the UDFA could take over, but now you're not in a spot where you have to go find someone to fill that role out. Yet you're still putting competition on Tim Boyle as David Blough did last season. So I think it's a good kind of placeholder signing. I'm going to assume there's not a ton of guarantees here. If there are and he's like locked in for next year, I would be pretty darn surprised. But I'm going to assume it's like a 1 year, probably not a ton of guarantees on his contract. And it kind of feels like a placeholding spot for David Blough. And I don't think I have any issues with that because when we did that restricted free agent video, I was cool with re-signing a guy like David Blough. David Blough, even though he played well in the preseason, it was not perfect. Accuracy was very questionable at times. He get off reads pretty slowly. And we talked about all this in this restricted free agent video. So if you check that out and you go back, you'll see what we said about David Blough. He could get off real slowly. There wasn't always a lot of velocity coming off of his passes. We know he has the scramble ability. He is a beneficial player when it comes to practice. Also, he does have in-game experience. Now, we saw him a very little bit last year when we kind of plugged him in at the end of the Eagles game, and it did not look very good. But he's had experience in the past as well when Stafford was down. But he also could be a nice little asset when practicing as well because he's a mobile quarterback, so he can kind of give you that look in practice of a guy that's a little bit faster. You want that for your defense. Shout out to Pride of Detroit for this quote. Earlier in the season when we faced the Baltimore Ravens, this is what Dan Campbell said about David Blough. First, because remember, Tim Boyle wasn't healthy. You've just got to get the functionality of it. And so I know Blough can do all of that stuff. He gets the shifts, the motions. That's a very beneficial part as well. I think when you're looking at those guys, I mean, same thing could come up on practice squad as well. So David Blough could end up being a practice squad player. Who knows? But something like that, right? I mean, those guys that are the kind of the scout team that they help you out, get prepared for the week, that's where you can be beneficial. Not only can he bring some mobility, because if you really need that, sometimes you put a wide receiver there, but that understands the offense, shifts, things like that to really give you a nice look defensively. That's another spot where guys like that could be beneficial. You may never see him actually play at the quarterback spot, but to help you in practice, that stuff goes overlooked because we don't see it, but it's important. But we'll likely have some competition this offseason and through next season to try to make the team. Tim Boyle feels like a lock, but David Blough, not necessarily. And the Lions have done this at a lot of positions. The Lions have the most guys under contract in the NFL, and it's really not even close from my understanding. What I've seen, it's not that close. Lions have the most players under contract of any team in the NFL with 73 now. They're opening up the draft. They're keeping some placeholders because really there are some locks. Khalif Raymond's kind of a lock with his new deal. DJ Chark's a lock with his new deal. Alex Anzalone feels like a lock. Like, there's guys that are kind of like locks, but once you get past those guys and you start looking at some of these cheaper deals that we've been bringing back, you start to see that these guys aren't locks. All the exclusive, we brought back every single exclusive rights free agent, but none of them are locks to make the team because none of them have guarantees for next season and none of their cap hits are very expensive. They're all sub $1 million. So I would assume Tim Boyle, I would assume David Blough in some sort of way is somewhat similar to that type of deal. Not completely, but somewhat similar to that type of deal. Now, on the other side of it, the Detroit Lions lost their first free agent in free agency. Lions have brought back a lot of their guys throughout free agency, and they're trying to bring back their guys that, you know, they feel like they can move forward with and be part of that foundation that they've laid. And again, some of them are still kind of placeholders to that, depending on how the draft goes, right? You don't want to have to be like, all right, we got to draft this position because we don't have players here, we don't have depth here, so we have to draft this spot. But then if it doesn't work out, now we're relying on someone random, or we're relying on this rookie who we don't necessarily think has panned out completely and he's not completely ready. It makes sense what the Lions are doing, and it follows what they did back with the Rams. However, they did lose one of their free agents, and that is linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin to the Houston Texans. The report is he is signing a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. Again, we don't have the contract details on that, but that is the report that we have been given. First off, I'm happy for Jalen because luckily for him, he was able to get an opportunity last season. The Lions gave their guys opportunities, and he fit much better. Pass regime, it just did not work out well because you had Matt Patricia come in who, as we've talked about, one of his bigger mistakes was probably trying to go directly to scheme rather than the players that he had on the roster, which led to a lot of turnover. And unfortunately for a guy like Jalen, who was only there for one season with Jim Caldwell's defense, all of a sudden did not fit the style. You have the smaller, faster linebacker, and his role kind of got reduced to playing special teams. I really saw the field with Matt Patricia, especially a couple years into that regime, just like what happened with a guy like Jared Davis, the guy that tried to bulk up to fit the defense. It just did not work out because he was for a different scheme. And since Matt Patricia came in and he changed it to his defense, it just was a lot of turnover. So Jalen didn't find the field. However, he was always beneficial on special teams. That always showed up. But this past year, he started to get some reps defensively, and he had some really nice games in there. I thought he definitely improved, and I thought there was a stretch in the second part of the season where he was pretty consistent. He has the athleticism to cover, but you got to think he's still very young in terms of experience defensively. I mean, last year was really kind of in a weird way like his rookie season. I mean, if you really think about it, the amount of snaps that he was finally getting. Special teams, always effective with him, but he was also clutch for the Lions. And that was a big reason I thought the Lions would probably be interested in bringing him back. Multiple forced fumbles, big time player. The Minnesota Vikings games comes to mind immediately. Making that strip, which just all of a sudden put us back in the game. I'm glad he was able to get his opportunity. But the Lions went with Alex Anzalone, who I don't have a problem with because, you know, when we asked about this going way back, I said, yeah, I'd probably slightly prefer Alex Anzalone because I'm a big Alex Anzalone fan. I like his game, and I actually think he'll fit a little bit better next season in our defense based on the role that he could play because I think Derek Barnes will have a much bigger role. I also thought the Lions would bring back Jalen. So this one did surprise me a little bit here, and who knows, maybe the Lions were willing to offer him a contract, but maybe not the 2-year deal that he's getting here with the Houston Texans because he still wouldn't have had a, maybe a lock that he's going to get starting playing time next year. Maybe he just has a better opportunity where the Houston Texans are at getting that 2-year deal. I thought he'd be back because remember Aaron Glenn said, yeah, he'd compete for a starting role because he did have a really nice stretch in that second part of the season. The Lions have another linebacker that can kind of fill that role as a fantastic special teamer, and that's Josh Woods. Because we saw more Jalen defensively, Josh Woods had his opportunity on special teams first, and he shined on special teams. So now you kind of have that back. He's a little bit locked in. He's got $500,000 guaranteed on his contract with his $1.5 million cap hit. Not completely, but now you get him back on the winter deal. So the Lions currently have 7 linebackers under contract, but I'm just glad that he got his opportunity last year to showcase himself, and now he's on a deal because otherwise he probably wouldn't have found playing time, and right now it'd been really hard for him to find a spot on the roster because no one knows what he is. So that's the good thing for Jalen. I'm happy for him in that way. Currently, our linebacker group right now consists of Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, Curtis Bolton, Tavante Beckett, Sean Dion Hamilton, and Anthony Pittman. Really, there's not a lot of locks in there aside from probably Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone. So kind of like the other positions, there's a lot of possible placeholders. Even Sean Dion Hamilton, who I love the value, he's not a lock. I think he'll make the team next year, but he's not a lock. Tavante Beckett, he's not a lock. They kept him around last year, but they kept him around on the practice squad to develop, to put some work in. He's not a lock, a former UDFA Defensive Player of the Year for Marshall. Then you look at a guy like Curtis Bolton, who's brought in during the season last year out of Oklahoma. He's not a lock either because of his contract, and same thing with Anthony Pittman. So there's still a lot of guys that aren't locks here. They do fill holes, so you don't have to push for certain spots. I would assume the Lions are going to address linebacker in the draft, possibly with 2 picks, maybe. I still think there's potential for them to go sign a free agent linebacker. But you have to keep in mind that guys are still being released. Movement is still happening. So if there's not a guy that you love now, you don't want to just go sign somebody just to sign somebody. Be like, hey, we got another linebacker. Because if you're doing that, if you're signing a free agent from another team, he's going to be getting guaranteed money. And you don't want to give a lot of guaranteed money to a guy that maybe you don't love in free agency. So I think it's taking the same approach to the draft as sort of you are to free agency. You want to draft guys that you love. You want to sign guys that you love and you see potential in. Because if you're signing a free agent, even if that's a Miles Jack, he's getting guaranteed money. So if you don't love that free agent addition, then you don't want to necessarily sign him. You can stay patient with it. And now you have so many players under contract where your ultimate idea is to build through the draft. You got 10 draft picks after the 3 comp picks have been announced. Lions will probably address that in the draft. But I definitely think it's still open to get a linebacker. I just don't think there's any time timetable or there's any rush to do so. And maybe someone comes available and like, oh, we really like him. Maybe they're working out contract details. They're trying to look at it financially, but I don't think there's any rush to do it. With all that being said, the Lions right now are approximately about $21.4 million in cap space, which is a pretty good spot compared to the rest of the National Football League, which means our projection was pretty darn accurate when we went through it yesterday after the Chark deal and taking a look at the Charles Harris deal. This does not include, however, the Khalif Raymond cap number. Don't know what that's going to be. We were told 2 years up to $9.5 million, which means there probably will be incentives in there, which means the cap number could be pretty low. I think it'll be around $2 million just based on every contract. Every contract we've given out so far, the cap number is pretty darn low for this season. Khalif feels more like a lock. He's going to have some guaranteed money in there, but I'm going to assume his cap number is pretty low. So the Lions will probably be just under $20 million. I would think maybe $19 million range after that Khalif Raymond signing becomes official, because the Trey Flowers cut has also become official. Good luck, Trey Flowers, going forward. Wishing the best of luck to Trey Flowers. I mean, it's unfortunate he had to deal with all his injuries and stuff like that, but I know he'll get an opportunity elsewhere. But the Lions do still have some cap space to spend, and I have no issue with playing a little bit patient with it and not just grabbing a guy to grab a guy. So that's kind of how I look at the whole situation. I would have liked to see Jalen Reeves-Maybin come back. I would have. So wishing him the best of luck. Again, I don't think linebacker is one of those positions they're going to value very highly anyway. It's just not the highest position of value, I don't think, in the way that Brad Holmes builds his teams. So keep that side in mind as well. But I definitely could see additions, specifically at linebacker and safety, through free agency, even if they are on cheaper deals and are not locks to be starters. But again, I don't think there's any rush to make that happen. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. David Blough is back. Jalen Reeves-Maybin is a Texan, and we'll keep you updated with Lions free agency news. Go to doseofdn.com for the Lions free agency tracker. We're going to be live with Last Second Dose on this channel with Rad to talk free agency. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'm out.